wondering how I got into this mix. Mind playing tricks and I'm fiending for a fix. Habits overriding, imploding into explosion. Tapering away like ocean, coastal erosion. Bringing down falls like a Shakespeare tragedy. Expectation versus novelty and odyssey. Trusting the truth of my power like a battery. Showing a new way to each and every wagon see. Imposing the impossible, surpassing every obstacle. Sailing with my voice until we all become unstoppable. Visionary depiction, blurring fact from fiction. Enriching perception with colorful depiction. Scales are tipping and I feel it in every nerve. Revolutionary like the birth of spoken word. Tuning my thoughts to the streams of the absurd. Walking on by to a new day I turn. Walking on, walking on, walking on, walking on, walking on. Walking on, walking on, walking on, walking on, walking on by to a new day I turn. To the mountain of the fountain of the knowledge that I learned. Walking on by to a new day I turn. My true self dwelling in the clouds in the sky. Walking on, walking on, walking on by, on by, on by, on by.
All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Today is, as I said, December 16, 2017. My name is Derrick Broze. I write for Activist Post, The Anti-Media, MetPress News, and plenty of other websites, as well as run the Conscious Resistance Network. So, as I mentioned in the brief intro, we're going to be talking about net neutrality today. We're going to be talking about a story about Monsanto and cancer claims. We're going to talk about the indefinite detention of American citizens still being held for over 3 months now by the Trump administration and what that means for the rest of us. And then the final story, we'll be talking about the mainstream media, or as I like to call them, the deadstream media, finally admitting a little bit of truth when it comes to the origins of the Islamic State. So lots to cover, and of course, your comments below, please. Those of you who are tuned in, we got about 400 people listening right now. Let's get that number up to 500. If you want to share this out on your timeline, on any pages you manage, or on friends' timelines, things like that, those are always helpful and supportive, and it helps us grow to push out a more conscious message, because we're about awareness here. We're about talking about self-governance and freedom in our lives and our communities, but we're also about elevating ourselves and trying to be the best version of ourselves as possible. So that's what the Conscious Resistance is about. And if you want more people to hear that message, please comment below and let them know where you're listening from. If you see somebody near you, contact them. You guys start building community in your area. Start focusing on how you can empower each other. So yeah, lots of good things going on. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I do want to play a quick clip real quick before we get into the news. This is actually a video I tried to play last week. For those of you who tuned in last week, I just returned from Costa Rica, visiting Costa Rica for my birthday, specifically this beautiful place called Punta Mona. You can go to puntamona.org, puntamona.org, and find out more about them. But I got this video here real quick that I want to play you that really shows what it's about. And yeah, check it out real quick. Let's see this. Play that clip. I don't know why it's acting up, but Damon's going to go ahead and post that link below if you don't mind, Damon. That's on the Mind Unleashed Facebook page. But really, it's a beautiful place. You can only see it in that clip a little bit, but it's in Punta Mona, Costa Rica, down on the Caribbean side, not far away from Panama. And really just a beautiful place. Lots of good people there I met getting involved with. And I plan to go back because it's a great example. Stephen Brooks, co-founder of Envision Festival, another community founded, La Ica Villa, also in San Jose, Costa Rica. Just really awesome dude who's focused on sustainability and building a better world without relying on government or corporations to do it for us. And I love that. I'm always going to highlight people who are building better things in the world. So check that out. So, of course, the big story this week, though, is net neutrality. And I've actually done a little bit of writing and interview this week on RT, Russia Today, the boogeyman maybe for some of you. But I discussed this issue 2 times this week. Here you can see net neutrality is gone. Is a decentralized internet the solution? That's basically the title of the video. We're going to play that clip for you guys real quick in a moment as well. And I also wrote this article here, what both sides are missing about net neutrality. This was just published this morning on the Anti-Media. And we're going to go over these briefly. I'll play the clip real quick so you can get a basic idea of what I'm discussing here.
Turn tonight to Derrick Broze, who's an independent journalist. Mr. Broze, nice to have you with us. Death of the internet. Is that a little extreme, or is that just a tagline to get people to pay attention? What do you make of that?
Maybe it's both. Maybe it is a bit extreme, but it's also helpful to get people to pay attention. And I think anytime people are paying attention, we're probably better off than we are when they're asleep. But I think it might be a bit exaggerated.
So who are the winners here? Is it the big companies? And when I hear that they're going to block websites, give me some definition on that. Who makes the decision? How would that happen?
So the idea here is that with the removal of net neutrality protections that were passed during the Obama administration, with those out of the way, that big telecoms, internet service providers would have the ability to throttle certain web traffic. That means slow down maybe traffic to RT, for example. They might be a prime candidate for throttling traffic. That's the big fear, and I think it's legitimate in the sense of activists and independent media being concerned that they might be pushed out for political reasons and that the ISPs can affect that. Now, that could potentially in the future lead to the direct blocking of websites, some worry, but at the same time, it also could lead to, say, more customization in the sense of if a grandmother doesn't access the internet but maybe once a month only to use email or to social media, perhaps she doesn't need to pay for a full broadband service package. And theoretically, that could be a benefit of this, is that, you know, alternative customized packages could be offered to customers based on what they actually use and not what they don't use. That's the best case scenario.
Yeah, that's the best case scenario, but of course that would be limited use because people are going to follow their pocketbook on situations like that. And these big companies are about one thing, making money, and then next year making more money. So who knows where this is going to go. But blocking websites, who's going to make those decisions? The CEO, the chairman, the board of directors, the government's going to say, hey, you are not going to allow this information into America? Well, take us down that road.
Well, okay, so I mean, we had, with net neutrality protections, right, the idea is that there's a light touch regulation from government institutions in order to make sure that the internet stays open and free. That's the way this debate's been pitched to us. I do think that that's true in one facet, and the situation you describe as far as maybe a CEO, maybe somebody who rubs elbows with the political elite decides that he wants to block or throttle traffic so slow that it would just be ridiculous. Most people won't even spend the time to go after these websites like RT or other independent media. That's completely possible, but I do think that we shouldn't ignore the possibility that actually what happens is that this movement by both the government and their corporate partners actually spurs on more innovation, in the sense that we already have beautiful, amazing, intelligent people out there working on blockchain-based technologies to completely bypass the internet service providers and create a new decentralized internet. I think that we should maybe put some energy into seeing what other solutions are out there. This could be bad in the short term and maybe even in the long term. We have to wait and see. But I do also have faith in the innovators out there that could create something much more free than what we have now.
Okay, and of course, this is an example of elections have consequences.
All right, so you guys get the idea there. That was my appearance on Ed Schultz on Russia Today. Damon, if you don't mind posting that link so everybody can finish watching that if they want to. It's also on YouTube. And And as I mentioned, I did this article here with the anti-media looking at what both sides are missing about net neutrality, which is pretty much what I was just discussing in that interview right there, which is that, okay, we're worried about, are the corporations going to be able to take over control of the internet? And the other side says, well, this is a positive thing because the government is no longer involved with the internet. And I tend towards that. I tend to think that our communities can take care of ourselves and we can build better institutions that actually represent what our needs are locally. However, for pretty much, I guess, since phones have been around, people have relied on other institutions for that. And with the internet, we continue to rely on other institutions for that. And what happens is you're either putting the ability to access the free flow of information that we have become accustomed to via the internet and its decentralized nature, which is truly spontaneous order in action. We have left that up to corporations or the government and expecting them to know what to do with it. Either saying, well, corporations, they should decide best for what people are going to have access to, or the government, well, we're going to regulate what type of businesses can enter the marketplace and what type of ISPs are allowed, things of this sort. I think it's important for us to really look at that. And this is what this article is talking about here. I actually mentioned, I'm just going to mention 3 things because you already heard what I had to say in the interview. I don't want to repeat myself. But what are these solutions? When I talk about decentralized alternatives, and I mentioned that there are beautiful, amazing, intelligent people out there doing great things, what are these solutions? I name a couple here in this article. Check it out. And Damon, again, please post that link. There you go. Made Safe is the first one. You can see right here, link to the website, Made Safe. The goal is to create a decentralized, distributed, secure, and private network. And they have been working for over a decade now, and they're getting closer and closer. They released a browser recently, but they are going to have the idea being just like with peer-to-peer distributed downloading and file sharing, that there's no central server, right? So that all this information, people basically their computer allows the network to use some of their power, and in return they get cryptocurrency, what is called SafeCoin, and that can be redeemed for value potentially later. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Then another one is called Nexus Earth. And if you've been following the show for a while or following my work, then you know that I spoke at the Nexus Earth conference in September. Excuse me if I sound weird, I'm fighting off a cold. But I spoke at the Nexus conference in September, and Nexus, it's a team that's bringing together space exploration via rockets going to space with cube satellites and cryptocurrency. And so it's really interesting. And basically what they're going to start doing, they're already building a rocket factory in Arizona, and their goal in the long term is to launch these rockets into space, not to take people, but to carry these cube satellites. And these satellites are going to basically have the first blockchain, which is the technology that cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is built upon. They're going to have this technology blockchain spread out through space through cube satellites. So the first blockchain in space, and they're also going to have a cryptocurrency element involved with this. But truly their goal is, when you look at their website, they talk about decentralizing the decentralization. And so their goal is to have peer-to-peer, free, distributed internet for everybody all around the world using the blockchain and using these satellites. And they're planning to launch the first rockets and satellites in space by 2020. So this is not some far-off distant future. The solutions are right here in front of us. We need to support, promote, and create the solutions that we want to see. So if you're not capable, like if you don't have the tech savvy to do these type of things, because I don't, then support those who do, which is what I try to do, and by promoting the projects, donating to them periodically, supporting them on Patreon, things like that. It's worth it to help all of us, right? For those of us who are actually going to use this. Or we can just be passive, and yes, possibly the internet will get further controlled and corporations will take over. Maybe government gets more regulation going and more restrictive, but ultimately whatever happens or does not happen is based on what we as a free people do right now. You are a free, beautiful human being, capable of anything that you put your mind to. You are capable of changing this world by changing yourself every single day and every single moment. This system wants you to not believe in yourself, to disempower yourself, to divide yourself, to otherize each other, and to see your enemy everywhere you go instead of looking at the power that we have. And I think that that's really what's the root of this issue. And also, now, I'm not saying that there won't be any negatives to come out of this. As I said in the interview there, that perhaps in the beginning, initially, there are some negatives to this, and maybe that will change, I think, as innovation starts to take place and ideas like these decentralized internet. The government can't control that unless they literally going to shoot people's satellites out of space and not allow us to access space, which will just be more evidence that they believe that they own us and that we are not free. Unless they do that, they cannot stop this technology. It's out of the box. It's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And that's a beautiful thing. So we should use the technology that works to free the people and fight the technology that works to destroy our privacy and our liberties and our freedom and oppress us. And that's a very, it's a tricky battle there. It's a very thin line there. One other project I want to mention here is called the Open NIC project. So typically when you guys access the internet, all of us, we're on like www, right? The World Wide Web, theantimedia.org, or .activistpost.com, or .midpressnews, or whatever, theconsciousresistance.com. That's the way that people access the internet. And these are, using the domain name system. So that's DNS, domain name system. I think I really should blow my nose. I'm going to have to blow my nose. I'm going to hope you guys don't mind. But the DNS system, right? And so some websites, the .coms, for example, the .nets, these are known as top-level domains, TLDs. And this is the way that people typically access the internet. And you might not be aware of this, but the internet is already centralized to some degree. There's various centralized access points with institutions like ICANN, which is officially known as the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN, which is basically, they're the ones who give the domain names access to the internet. They're the ones who allow and approve of new domain names. And so they can essentially limit what types of websites get out there. They don't really, but it could happen, and it has happened to some degree. So the Open NIC project is basically a nonprofit organization made up of a bunch of hobbyists who have built this system that allows people to access the internet via alternative registries. So these are not your typical mainstream domain name system and top-level domains. So again, I don't want to bore you guys with details, but again, some really awesome technically aware, technologically savvy people creating solutions so that we can access what we have come to know as the internet, but without relying on these centralized institutions and whatever they're involved with. We can actually start building the solutions ourselves, stop relying on other people. That's the goal, right? Free your mind, free your heart, free yourself, stop relying on other people, because you are powerful. And we have people right now listening to this video live. We're interacting with each other, right? This is a conversation. I'm here. I'm going to read your comments. I'm going to look at what you have to say. You guys can comment to each other. Later on in the week, people are going to watch this as well, and they're going to they're going to learn about these issues, and they're going to share it to other people. And this is a conversation we're having. This is the power of the internet and the beauty of it. So yes, we should be concerned about what direction it's going in. We should fight to preserve it, but perhaps we shouldn't just stay in the current system, and we should adopt new forms of combating the centralization and giving ourselves power back. That's what I think is always going to be the solution. Give yourselves power. Don't rely on other people. Now let's get into this next story here. The Carnegie Council calls for global governance to regulate geoengineering. Now, geoengineering is an interesting topic because it's one that should be of a concern to all people. I don't care who you are, what, left, right, liberal, conservative, whatever, if you still use those type of labels. In the end, really what matters is that I have to blow my nose. 1 second, I apologize. I'll mute the microphone. Whoa, it didn't mute. You guys are awesome. All right, cool. I feel better now. I can actually breathe. Okay, so the Carnegie Council has been calling for global governance to regulate geoengineering. And as I said, basically all of you should be concerned about this, because the issue is kind of mixed up in two different worlds. There are those conspiracy researchers, I'll say, who believe that geoengineering programs, which are, it's a technology involving the mass modification and the deliberate modification or engineering of the climate and weather through a variety of technologies. One includes spraying aerosols from the back of planes in order to spray them into the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and to reflect sunlight, is what they say, to combat global warming. So that, which is known as solar radiation management, or SRM, that itself, it looks similar to what some people consider to be chemtrails, or the chemtrails conspiracy theory, saying that government is already spraying the people in, some sort of mass experiment. And then, of course, we know that the U.S. government has experimented on U.S. citizens in the past. We found out years later, oh, by the way, we were spraying a chemical over St. Louis to test it over, black poor neighborhoods or different things like that. So I wouldn't really put it past them, or maybe even some rogue corporation who's discovered this technology and who uses it, just going out and doing it on their own. But as of the official story, there are supposedly no active programs. There are only laboratory research and computer modeling research on geoengineering and what would happen, how we would possibly stop the heating of the planet using this very radical technology to start essentially playing nature, playing God, and modifying the weather. And I don't know, man, it's kind of creepy. It drives me a little, it freaks me out a little bit. But, I want to get your guys' thoughts on it first. Comment below. Let us know what you think about geoengineering. Do you think that it's already happening? Are you a part of that sort of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, because, I myself have been labeled a conspiracy theorist in the past, and I'll proudly wear that label because there's a lot of conspiracies that exist in the world, and there's nothing crazy about it. It's just reality. That's powerful people conspire together all the time. So, so what do you think? Do you think that the spraying is already taking place, or this is just a possibly dangerous technology that's now getting introduced as a response to global warming? Now, those who believe that global warming isn't happening believe that this is really just a part of a lie to push global warming, telling people that we need to fix the earth when there really isn't a problem, or that it's just a cycle, and in exchange they get to use this crazy technology, which, by the way, they have said in the computer modeling research and the laboratory research have said that if we do begin doing geoengineering, that once they start, they cannot stop. Because if they did, it would cause a sudden increase in heat, more than we're expecting to see right now. So potentially this could make things much worse. They're also saying, since there's really no way to control, how it affects one area to the next, you might, spray on one part of the world and then increase rain or do something good in that area, but then maybe you create a drought in a whole other part of the world. And there's also the questions about, what about poor nations or indigenous people, other people who are being completely left out of this conversation, because it's basically being Western governments calling for these solutions, and these, I say solutions, scare quotes, because I don't know if they are the solutions. But that's where we're at right now. And now we have institutions like the Carnegie Council. And if you know the name Carnegie, that's Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, very rich, powerful family in the turn of the 20th century here in America, along with the Rockefellers and many others. Well, the Carnegie Council has released a new essay basically calling for policymakers and thinkers and to people in general to start having this important conversation about, what are we going to do? How are we going to stop climate change? What are we going to do about spraying the planet? We need to have some form of international governance, basically, they're saying. They're saying the current institutions, the national governments and the local governments, the state governments, are not adequate to deal with this situation, to deal with having to make these sort of decisions about how do you handle geoengineering, climate engineering? How do we know already that militaries around the world are not secretly, covertly doing this? There's really no way to know. You can call it a conspiracy, but look up black budgets and look up the fact that the majority of the military budget is actually private and classified from the American people. And this is probably all around the world. Governments and militaries are doing secret things and hiding it from the people all the time. So how do we know that they're not doing this? The United States military has talked about this in a 1997 paper called Weather as a Force Multiplier, controlling the weather by 2025 or something along those lines. And so we're getting very close, and this is something they've talked about. And really, when you look into, I've done plenty of research on this, when you look into it and you understand the history of climate engineering and weather modification, you see that really the whole goal of weather tracking and forecasting was in order to eventually to try to be able to control and manipulate the weather. That was the whole purpose of the beginning science of weather forecasting and the computer modeling that went into it. It was all about eventually trying to completely control the weather. So that's the truth of that matter. Damon, if you can, please go ahead and post that below. If you're listening on the Mind Unleashed page, and I see some likes, thank you guys for that. Please share this out on your pages, share it on your friends' timelines. Comment below, let us know where you're listening from. If you got any questions, comments about geoengineering, about net neutrality, and about these next couple topics, please feel free to speak up, and we will share your comments, or I'll answer any questions. And if you want to see the links, they're posted on the Conscious Resistance live page. So this next story I talked about last week on last week's show. which, by the way, typically I do this show on Fridays, but I was very busy yesterday, so we're doing it today on Saturday. It'll be back on Friday next week, on the 29th. But this next story here, I mentioned it last week, but we do have a little bit of an update. It's very important, so we're going to cover it anyways. Federal government continues to argue in favor of indefinitely detaining an American citizen. So the Trump administration is holding an American citizen. They've been holding him for over 3 months now. We know very little about this man. We know that he was captured somewhere in Iraq and handed over to the Iraqi government after, he was supposedly fighting with ISIS, and I know right away some people are like, well, who cares, torture him, burn him alive, drown him, let him rot, whatever, he's not a human being, things like that. I don't know, I don't buy that sort of thinking, and especially when we don't have any evidence of that. This is so far the government hasn't said anything, and they haven't charged him with anything either because they apparently don't have any evidence to. But still, he's been denied access to a lawyer, denied access to a speedy trial or charges or anything for over 3 months now. Why is the man over there? We don't know. We can judge, we can make assumptions, we can try to predict and speculate, but right now we don't know. What we do know is that the United States government under the Trump administration and the U.S. military is labeling the man an enemy combatant, something that was really popularized by George W. Bush. Y'all remember W. And basically, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, has been fighting to represent this man and get him some sort of legal protection before he, gets himself in trouble or is tortured. Just try to figure out what's going on, because it was a story that was broke by the Daily Beast 3 months ago. They got access to a source that confirmed that this happened, and the U.S. government has now confirmed that this man is being held. But essentially, they're trying to argue this. Now, get this sort of catch-22 legal BS. They're saying, okay, well, so they're not letting the man have access to anybody. He can't meet with anybody. Nobody can come talk to him. Lawyers can't see him. The ACLU, nobody, right? So he has no way to contact anybody to go out there to specifically request a lawyer, at least as far as we know, because nobody has access to him. And so the ACLU is saying, hey, we want to represent this guy because he's in a lot of trouble. We need to do something about this. But the American government, the military, is saying, no, you can't do that because he didn't specifically request for your help. But he can't specifically request for their help because he can't see anybody and let them know that he wants a lawyer, and he doesn't know people want to represent him because he can't see anybody. You see where I'm going with this. It's just, it's mind-boggling, but it's what we should expect from the U.S. military. Thankfully, there is this judge, Tanya Chutkan. I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce her name. Right here you can see a U.S. District Judge, Tanya Chutkan there. She has been very skeptical of the claims made by the U.S. government and their reasoning for detaining this American citizen, and she's given some really powerful quotes, and basically the government has argued that it's a temporary situation and they're trying to resolve the matter very quickly, and she's giving them just about a week, I think. We should probably hear more news on this in the coming week, what's going to happen with this man. And again, if you're sitting there thinking, well, he's part of war, right? War happens and you get locked up. Well, we don't know that, man. There's so many people who have been locked up in the U.S. and the Western civilization's war on terror, right, that later we find out they had nothing to do with any sort of crime or terrorism or anything like that, and they were tortured, they were beaten. Several people have died, I'm sure more than we know, honestly, have died while being tortured and held, even though they were never charged, taken to trial, anything. It's ridiculous. And so you can't sit here and act like the UK governments, the American governments, and all the sort of NATO Western states have any semblance of moral high ground when they do things like this. And we as people, as free, powerful people, we need not support this. We need to push back through it and do what we can to push for something better, I guess, to do better than that. We can do better, right? I think we can. I know we can. So I'm actually writing another story. It's not going to be ready probably till Monday, but I just want to give you guys a brief preview of this. It involves Monsanto and cancer claims, right? Because if you kept up with it at all, there's a product called glyphosate, which is also known as Roundup. Glyphosate is the specific, weed killer. It's the pesticide that's within Roundup, which is Monsanto-owned, most, well-known, highest-bought pesticide maybe in the world, definitely in the United States. And it was originally linked to cancer by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC. And now I followed this story for a couple of years, And I've written articles showing both sides back and forth, like, hey, the ARC says Monsanto's glyphosate causes cancer. Obviously, that's big news, and people are already angry. They don't like Monsanto, so we're ready to just, assume and support this, right? But then there was like the European Health Agency. They said, no, this isn't true. The EPA has firmly and unanimously agreed that glyphosate has not caused abnormal growths in mice being studied. So the interesting things is a couple weeks ago, or a month or more ago, back in October actually, there was a report saying that the IARC, the international organization that researches cancer for the World Health Organization, which found that glyphosate was cancerous, the report basically came out accusing them of editing certain findings and showing bias towards the research and not putting the full story out there and things like that. And that may be true, right? If you look at them in their own words, it does seem to be true. You can see the article here from Reuters. It says glyphosate review, the World Health Organization Cancer Agency edited out non-carcinogenic findings. So basically what this was saying is that, hey, they lied. This would basically vindicate Monsanto, right? They would say, okay, well, Monsanto's product is not cancerous. This was just an overzealous health organization lying or falsifying some research, or just maybe not showing us the full picture. And I was kind of like, wow, that's crazy, and maybe this isn't. Maybe Monsanto's not as bad as we've all been told, that they were horrible and that they're trying to poison the planet and kill the bees and the ground and the soil and the air and everything. I mean, they are a chemical company, right? That's what they've started out as. So now they're involved in seeds and agriculture, but they started out as a chemical company. That's what they do. Then you look at this article here from In These Times, which is an independent journalism magazine, called How Monsanto Captured the EPA and Twisted the Science to Keep Glyphosate on the Market. Now, this is a very long article here, and it is worth your time. Damon's going to post both of these links below, both the Reuters link and this one here. I'm just scrolling through it right here so you can kind of see. It's, like I said, very long, but this is long-form journalism. This is a dying art. Please support it. Look at this magazine. Look at this article. So what I'm working on is an article that's going to put together this information. It's going to be called something along the lines of, so is glyphosate cancerous? Because I don't know what the heck with all the different news and different information. And we're going to make it very easy to look at this story. We're going to show how, okay, which agencies have said it's cancerous? The World Health Organization's IARC, one of them. The EPA in America says it's not cancerous. The other part of the World Health Organization says it's not cancerous. The European Safety Authority says it's not cancerous. So most health authorities where Monsanto has a foot in are saying it's not cancerous, this is BS. However, there's a dispute over a study from 1973 where the EPA originally said that glyphosate was cancerous, and it's related to a study on mice. Now, apparently they did a lot of lobbying and behind closed door type of shady stuff, and they were able to get their way eventually and get those claims changed. And now it's been 50 years now, and most people don't have the memory or the knowledge of this, and Monsanto has got it flipped to say that, hey, it's not cancerous. But I'm going to put that all together. You can check out those two articles on your own. I think it's worth your time, worth your your research to look into that, because we can't just blindly accept information because we hate Monsanto or because we believe Monsanto is an unfair corporatist company, because they're so involved with the U.S. government and they're getting their foot in other parts of the world that they become intermeshed with the governments, and it is a revolving door. And it's very easy to just be angry about that, to be angry about the destruction to the environment and their changing of nature and patenting nature with seeds and genetically engineered organisms and things of that. But we still have to do our research. We still have to verify the things and the claims that are made and make sure that they're true. So yeah, and in line with that, let's think about this. What do we know about the organization called the Islamic State, or ISIS to some people, or ISIL to some others? We know that this is apparently the new Al-Qaeda, the organization that we have been told for several years now that we should be afraid of, that they're going to behead Americans, they're going to drown Americans, they're going to set them on fire, they're going to blow them up. They've been plotting every day to get rid of us and our freedoms. I mean, just a host of atrocious things that these individuals, these radicals, extremists, which do exist, there are people out there who buy into this ideology, and that we should be afraid of them, we should give up our rights for them, our privacy, things of this sort, and we should always trust the government whenever they say they've caught a terrorist. Now, I don't want to just assume that you guys have bought that line of thinking, because I'm assuming if you found this show today, right now, in this moment, on December 16th, 2017, that you are an intelligent human being who's a critical thinker, and you think about issues deeper than what the mainstream, the dead stream, gives you. You actually are a critical thinker. And you probably are aware that the United States government and their partners in Saudi Arabia have been funding the rebel groups in Syria, which are part of ISIS and different rebel extreme groups that are known for very violent actions. We've been funding them in the form of money and weapons to the Free Syrian Army and other groups. And it's a kind of a complex issue, but it's also very easy to see that this goes back to the 70s. This goes back to the United States funding Osama bin Laden to fight against Russia. This goes back to the United States funding rebel groups in different countries to try to overthrow governments that they were not friendly to. This is par for the course. This is what the government does, the U.S. government does, and the military does. So they saw an opportunity to try to kick out Bashar al-Assad, and I'm not here to defend him by any means. I'm just saying they want to get rid of him for their own purposes. And they saw an opportunity to do that. And so they started funneling weapons and money and support to these various splinter groups and rebel groups, including some of them that are associated with or even directly ISIS and the Islamic State, who are espousing this extremist ideology. And this has been reported widely by journalist Ben Swan, by plenty of other. If you follow anyone in the independent media, I'm sure you've heard of this by now. But now we actually have some in the mainstream media admitting it. There was a recent BBC report that touched on this. And now this one here, this is coming from the Anti-Media by Darius, which if you've never seen this guy's writing, he's an awesome writer. Check him out. But a report from the UK-based Conflict Armament Research Group analyzed 40,000 items by investigators, which its investigators recovered along ISIS's front lines between July 2014 and November 2017. The weapons they found include guns, ammunition, and components to make explosive devices. They also conducted 83 site visits in Iraq to collect weapons data. According to the report, by purchasing a large number of European arms and ammunition and then distributing them to groups within Syria without notifying the sellers of the arms, the U.S. violated the terms of sale and export agreed between weapons exporter. The report stated the United States and Saudi Arabia supplied most of this material without authorization, apparently to Syrian opposition forces. This diverted material, recovered from IS forces, compromises exclusively Warsaw Pact caliber weapons and ammunition purchased by the United States and Saudi Arabia from European Union member states and Eastern Europe. The report also goes on to explain supplies of material to the Syrian conflict from foreign parties, notably the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, have indirectly allowed IS to obtain substantial quantities of anti-armor ammunition. I mean, it couldn't be more clear than that. And this has been shown, as I said, plenty of other times. There was a Department of Defense report in the past that also showed that basically the radical extremist ideology that Saudi Arabia, interestingly enough, who's helping fund these rebel groups, the ideology known as Wahhabism, which originates with Osama bin Laden and others, was allowed to fester and grow in places like Syria and Iraq. And these rebel groups took on this. The United States gave them money and weapons, and they became ISIS. And that gave the United States an excuse to go in there and to try to bomb to save the Syrian people, right? But really the true goal is to try to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. That's always been the goal. The United States' goal is always in the long term to overthrow leaders that they disagree with and people that they wish would just go away and follow the party line, right? Especially those of you out there who don't have a central bank. If you don't have a central bank, then you're usually pretty close in line to being overthrown. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to check real quick in the comments. And if there are not, then I will sign off for the day. But thank you guys for listening. All of the links that we shared are down below. If you want to go check them out on the Conscious Resistance Facebook page and our video. Oh, I see Cody. What's up, brother? Cody said he'll be home for Christmas. My old friend Cody said he'll be home for Christmas. Can't wait to see you. Thank you for watching, man, and thank you for checking it out. I'm excited to see you guys. I was actually just thinking about you guys. Less government, more freedom. I agree. And somebody said, wash your hands. Oh, I just blow my nose. I will wash my hands, I promise. The government likes to fearmonger. That is true. Government is a fearmonger. please, man, look to agriculture in Brazil, The World According to Monsanto. That is definitely a good documentary, The World According to Monsanto. You look like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I don't know who that is, but I hope that's a good thing. Other than that, man, I just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for the support. Please go to theconsciousresistance.com. This is our website right here. I'm always releasing new content. I put out a new essay recently about my philosophy that I believe in, holistic anarchism, and how it relates to relational anarchism. We got new essays on conscious consumerism and Black Friday and recent sex abuse pedo news that we covered in the past. All kinds of important issues here that you can check out. And if you also feel inclined, you can go over to this. This is my Patreon account where you can support me on a monthly basis. I have about 55 people supporting me here for about $345 a month, which is very cool, and I'm so thankful and so blessed for that. And if I can get that up to about $500, I'm going to be releasing exclusive in-depth reports. I do this weekly show here, and I enjoy doing that, but I also want to do more long-form investigative reporting. And if you want to support those efforts, please sign up there on patreon.com. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for supporting this show. As I said, subscribe to us on YouTube, The Conscious Resistance. Follow us on Facebook at The Conscious Resistance Network. My name is Derrick Broze. You can find me on Twitter at DBrozeLiveFree. I'm also on Steemit at DBroze, B-R-O-Z-E. Thank you to everyone who's been watching and supporting. Thank you for the thumbs up. Comment below. Let people know where you're listening from. Find somebody near you. Build a better world together. Let's change things. Let's change the world together. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Remember, you're powerful, you're beautiful, and you're free. Peace.